Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Defense of the Patients. Today, another me-mid Roundtable Wednesday show. Are we settled on a name? Do you guys feel settled on a name yet?
I kind of like the Roundtable, man. Roundtable's good.
Although I've been reversing it, I've been saying Wednesday Roundtable, not Roundtable Wednesdays.
Sure.
Because there's no alliteration either way, but,
yeah,
whatever.
I like to think of it as like maybe just .p Roundtable, even,
Yeah.
I guess so. But, like, the day's pretty important. We're the centerpiece.
Right. We are the center.
If this was a castle, we would be the peak, or like a pyramid. That's a better example.
We bridge the gap between the Monday, Tuesday, and the Thursday, Friday, right?
Like King Arthur's table, we are the most important people within the castle.
That's right. So I'm Cyphus. I'm sitting here with Flub with two B's. That's your Christian name, right?
It is, in fact. You got it right.
And of course, everybody's favorite political podcaster, Ursinity.
Hello. Yep. Today, we're not going to talk about politics. Nothing has happened. I don't know why we would discuss politics. I mean, I don't know why that would happen.
Nothing major has occurred within the last 24 hours that would be worth talking about. Yeah, if you're looking for politics, well, you should have been here on the Skype call in the 10 minutes that poor Flub had to sit through with me and
Or on my Twitter.
Yeah, or watching Ursi's Twitter. Yeah, if you're interested in some political some political feedback from Ursi, you should just follow him there, You were live tweeting the entire debate, right?
I was live tweeting my own thoughts, etc. It was a good time. It's very like circle jerky. If like everybody knows, like you hang out with people that are relatively affiliated with you, so it gets kind of like, like I said, like circle jerky, kind of very like one person posts something and then you do similar things. But regardless of that, it was very fun.
So
and
if you want to see Ursi retweeting a bunch of stuff about how women belong in the kitchen and crooked Hillary's trying to steal this election, that's where you just go follow him on Twitter.
It was definitely that. And there were just tons of racial slurs everywhere. Yeah. And I was like, man, Lester Holt, so unqualified, yada yada. Yeah. That's all in jest, I promise.
Yeah.
I'm a card-carrying SJW, as many would slander me, which is not really slander. But
sure,
anyway.
Fair enough. See, I managed to work a little bit of political nonsense into this podcast anyway. So we are down a wazoo, and that is kind of my fault because it's really hard to record our latest Let There Be Geeks episodes all at once. Ursi, you're right. We're never going to do another series the way that we did this one ever again.
That's okay. It's good practice.
Yeah, it was a fun mistake. I'll say that. But yeah, so over on Let There Be Geeks, we've been recording a Narcos Season 2 recap, and we decided to do all 10 episodes, each with their own individual episode, and that turns out to be a very painstaking process with a show that gets released all at once. So next time around, we're going to segment it up. We'll do like episodes 1 to 3, episodes 4 to 6, and maybe split it up that way. I think make it a little easier on everybody involved. But so we're down a wazoo because of some recording conflicts yesterday. We've been recording the Wednesday show on Monday nights, but we're doing it on a Tuesday, so you get to hear all of Ursi's rantings and ravings about that debate.
I promise I will not bring up anything. Like, I even feel a little bad posting that on Twitter. I was joking the other day that I'm sure I would do much better on Twitter, like follower-wise, if I just kept it to Dota and talking about Dota, but that sounds so boring that I was like, I'm just going to post about politics and post about K-pop and K-drama and K-reality shows and all that, and like, if you don't want to follow me, don't follow me, screw it, whatever. So, it's definitely my personal Twitter, I'll put it that way.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to kind of get into, and because I feel like last week we really hit. I feel like last week in the last couple of weeks we've across all the shows. In fact, I was listening to an old Theorycraft Thursday today because we had a fan write in about wanting one of the songs that Roland did. I don't know why anybody would want to do that, right, Ursi?
Yeah. That fan is probably Roland's alternate account.
But he wanted to get his hands on one of the previous songs, and I went and I threw that particular episode on, and then I just kind of let it go through and listened to this random week, like 4 weeks ago of all of the .p episodes, And it was kind of interesting just to go through and see. And I feel like over the last few weeks, we've all hit versatility in heroes. We've kind of hammered it to death, maybe even. We were talking about, like, last week with you, Ursi and Flub. You guys feel like part of the reason you are maybe a little more successful as a player is due to that versatility in hero pool availability to you. And I agree. Like, I'm starting to do the same thing myself. Like, now I'm going on some Phantom Assassin runs and just ripping off Proud's build right away.
It's a good build.
It's a great build. But what I'm starting to struggle with as I enhance my versatility is altering those builds that I very quickly become comfortable with. Because I pick up a hero and, so in this case it was Proud's build, right? I go, I start off, in fact, I think I have the exact same starting item lineup that he buys. Tango, Salve, Clarity, and, Tango, Salve, Clarity, what am I missing? Stout, thank you. And, so I go into, like, a Phase, Aki, into Vanguard, into Deso. And then from there, I'll usually vary it up, like, depending on, I know enough with switching up my item build with if I see a hero that's got some evasion, I know, hey, I've got to get an MKB so I can deal with that. I can do those types of things, but I don't vary the build. I don't start a game knowing when I need to vary up my item build. And we were talking today on Twitter. I think Toffee's actually was the one who started this conversation. And Flub, I think you got a little bit involved with it as well. Ursi, Proud, everybody kind of threw their 2 cents in on, when do you build lifesteal, for instance, on PA, right?
Yeah, well, and
Right.
this was, I would say, my contribution was basically, hey, ask Proud.
Yeah.
And then I just made fun of Flub a little, and then I left.
Yeah.
And that was it.
I think I made sure that we were calling Flub with 2 B's, and then I did my own exit from the conversation. So Flub,
Yeah,
I'm throwing you on I'm putting you in the hot spot here. Like, what? So let's even just talk about that specific example. When do you build lifesteal on PA? What was the resolution of that conversation?
Okay, so I gotta state this because otherwise it's gonna be retweeted like 20 times, and like people are gonna like say, "Man, you don't play this hero." I do play PA. I play her mid, and I just play a lot of variety of heroes. And I've been playing support for so long that it's been a while since I've like sat down and played her. But I still am familiar with the hero, and I do know what she does during this patch, and I know like what strengths and stuff she adds. So to add that caveat in before I start talking a little bit, I believe that similarly to Proud, that it's not good to pick up lifesteal on her. It's generally kind of a crutch to have because you're there to do as much damage as you possibly can in the current iteration of her, and hopefully get out of the situation. A lot of times they'll use heroes that complement her a lot in this style because you're all about the crit and you're all about doing massive amounts of damage. And that's all basically based around the idea of getting the Deso at this point. Having Deso being applied on her dagger is just insane right now. It's not overpowered by any sense, but there's a reason why people don't pick up lifesteal because they need that quick damage output. And if you're going for that quick damage output, let's just like keep going or down that path and have that ability to live barely by having the other item that's bumped up, which is Vlad's, taking less physical damage. So she also has that possibility plus the possibility of missing her and having that not only the health regen but the actual static bonus to your hit points, and having that ability to kind of get through some of the blasty spells, or at least survive them, so that you can get a few more hits off, which in PA's case, a few more right clicks can mean a kill. So it's basically based, in my opinion, the reason why PA should not get lifesteal is because there's a lot based around helping her out anyway and helping out the carry in like whether it's auras or having that switch over, so you can kind of mitigate having like someone else maybe pick up a Vlad's for her, Or like in dire situations, in mid, if I can get the runes guaranteed because I have like a really good roaming situation with supports, picking up a bottle is okay. I wouldn't. I would. This is like one in probably 100 games. I would suggest doing it, but in the right circumstances, you can use that as kind of like a buffer. And I mean, that can kind of take the spot of a lifesteal item because you don't really need to go to lane as much, especially if you have a Vlad's. You can jungle any creep camp with a Vlad's, and you don't really need that lifesteal to do it. It just kind of makes you more squishy if you go down that lifesteal path,
Right.
and that's worse for her. You need to be able to be beefy this patch. You need to be able to do the explosive damage this patch.
So I guess the question I would ask then, it kind of taking into consideration the larger question here, which is versatility in items. What do you think some of the more common items are that can be swapped out with one another? Because I feel like at our skill level, the big items that everybody's aware of, and I'll readily admit here, the two items that I mostly pay attention to whenever I'm thinking about quote unquote versatility in my item build are MKB and BKB. I know I need to build a Monkey King bar if I'm ever in a game against a PA, for instance. You know, hey, I'm playing Jug. I'm going to build an MKB this game because there's a PA on the other team. Or, if I'm playing Sven, and, Sven's probably a terrible example there. But if I'm playing a carry that needs that BKB so that I can start dealing with an Invoker who is, getting some decent farm mid, I know that I need to pick up the BKB, but that's kind of about it, I would think, at our skill level for, getting away from the standard build that maybe we adopt with a hero from day one when we start getting comfortable with that hero.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it definitely... I always have a negative reaction whenever anybody says at my skill level or at this skill level, because it's a very defeatist term. But I think there are obvious key items that are very, very situational. Like you said, BKB is very situational. MKB on most heroes is very situational. Lincoln's is arguably quite situational, although nowadays the stats are so good, I would say it's just very good on the heroes that even situationally need it. And then there's other situational items like sometimes Manta. It can be considered a situational item, certain builds where, the only lockdown they have is an Orchid. So you build a Manta instead of a BKB because you're playing AM and, yada yada. But while there are these large items that are situational, I think when we discuss situational item builds, the more important part is these middle tier situational items and making small alterations that improve your efficiency or improve your chance to live, etc. Because, like you said, at your skill level, people are thinking more at the surface level, where they're thinking, all right, big late game items that are situational, like BKB is the perfect example. But as you kind of go farther, situational item pickups are almost more important on lower levels, like classic Raindrop. Raindrop is pretty situational, right? And that's a very structural item that is in that period of the game where you are trying to amass the ability to farm and get to those big items. And this is something, I know Flub, I think you were there, but I was talking to Scrunk about it because he was studying some 7K games, and he was saying that basically all they do is just buy tons and tons of little mid-game items and then gradually build up to those late game ones. So that's why you see a lot of things like drums and raindrops and Aquila and Veil and stuff like that, like the build up to Veil. Because these little items gradually build up into bigger ones. So when we're discussing situational items, I think the more important, or potentially not more important, but a very important layer of situational item pickups is that lower situation, or that lower level, or I don't know. In my mind, I have a chart that is incredibly inapplicable to this podcast, but I think that's a very important way to think about it, right? Is situational items are not just the big ones, but it's all about the little ones, right?
Oh yeah,
Now,
definitely. I feel like if you're playing for situational, and I mean, I would say little items aren't necessarily in situational, and I would also caveat that like that's what Dota's always been about for as long as I can remember is the build up to whatever the item is. Generally, yeah, you're going for whatever bonus that it gives you by the end of it, but a lot of items in the past have been hailed for what their beginning items do for them. Um, Whether it be something simple like headdress was like a really big deal for a long time because of mech, and it gave you a regen that didn't exist for a really long time, like before drums was out and things like that. And there's like a lot of different things that started out that way, and now that items are moving more, there's more of them available. I think that as time goes on, Ice Frog is trying to create that bridge more and have more items like in the mid game that have that potential to build into these bigger heavy set items, because before it was more of about like Dota was like all about the end game, and now the meta is switching to end game sooner and sooner. So if the end game is ending sooner and sooner, then you're going to want these basic stat items that build into the bigger, heavier hits in the mid game.
right. I think probably the best example of this that I can think of, think about this week's Monday show, you guys were talking about Spectre builds. And it's the difference between going phase, earn, Vanguard, Radiance, and getting Radiance at 25, but also having the sustain in lane and the ability to fight and the ability to kill, versus going Brown Boots, Radiance, and getting Radiance at, let's say, 24, but you're farming slower because you have less small items, and your build-up is slower. So that's kind of what I think of. And that's less situational. That's more like structural understanding of how heroes work and how items work.
Well, but I don't get me
little
wrong.
items are a big deal.
I think that's the, and I know I addressed this a little bit on the Monday episode, but that's, I think, maybe one of the biggest mistakes in the 2K region. And I suspect even in like the first parts of the 3K regions, because I know that I see, when I play with playing with Wazoo, back when he was 3K, not to make fun of him anymore, but I mean, playing with him at those levels and with other 3K players in the .P crew, you do see people just rush those big items. They don't have an appreciation for maybe the efficiency that is granted by going for some of those smaller tier items, even early game items. Like it's almost like. And I think the Brown Boots Radiance Rush is maybe the best example you can come up with, because
or Brown Boots Battle Fury AM, stuff like that.
Yeah, you see those runs to and I say Radiance because it feels more like a true late game item than even Battle Fury does. Battle Fury feels more mid game to me.
Kind of. Radiance actually kind of sucks in the late game, but
I mean like cost wise.
I shouldn't say that, but. Radiance is more of a farm accelerating mid game item than like a true late game. Like a true late game item is like a Daedalus.
Sure, yeah,
like something like that does as clear.
Although I'll tell you, I've seen Ember Spirits go Brown Boots Daedalus in our skill range.
Like, that's similarly bad. That's actually probably worse. I would say Brown Boots. Yeah, like if you're gonna go Brown Boots and then a next item. If your choices are Radiance and Daedalus, Radiance is definitely better than Daedalus. Because Daedalus, you're not going to have any stats. Like, what are you going to crit off of? Your Brown Boots? Like,
yeah.
Anyway.
So, I mean, yeah, I think there's... I don't think there's an appreciation for the stepping stone that is, that Aki, that is, Phase Boots Aki before I build my Vanguard, before I build my Desolator. I mean, I see a lot of PAs rush the Desolator. First and foremost, or I don't know. I guess you guys surely don't see that at your skill level.
I literally saw it last game that I was in a. I think it was like a 50-100, or no, it was like a 5. I think it was like 49-50 or something average game, and the enemy PA mid went. Gosh, I'm gonna try to remember. It was just like Phase Boots, maybe Aki. Bottle, and then straight Deso. So she had no like Vanguard, no health item at all. So we just like bursted her down. Also, Flub, I disagree with you because Bottle is actually very good on PA mid, but that is neither here nor there. That's a different discussion. But it is very common and very very strong in the mid matchup, just because mid is so different from like playing a safe lane PA and not getting harassed and not being ganked and not having to harass with daggers. Anyway, I feel like I kind of distracted our entire conversation from situation items to structural items.
Sure, but I mean, I think that's an important element of it. So even as here's why it relates. Here's why it is important.
I was gonna say I can relate it back, but I was gonna have to make some serious effort.
This is absolutely why it's important. Is because and I'll use myself as the example. Yes, now I've ripped off Proud's build, and I know that I'm gonna go. I know that I'm going to go Phase, I'm going to go Aki, I'm going to maybe pick up a Blightstone in between then and there, and then I'm going to get my Vanguard, and then I'm going to get my Deso. And I'll be honest with you, even just ripping off Proud's build to that point, I win most of my PA games like right about the time I get the Deso. Mm-hmm. And it's stupid good. Just stupid good. And I get a lot of shit for not building lifesteal on that PA.
People are idiots. Like, people will be like, "Why aren't you building Battle Fury? Why aren't you building like?"
Yeah, I get that.
People just, people like I had one of my most proud moments in a game I lost yesterday. No, yesterday, maybe it was the day before. I was playing AM, and I should have just supported. It was a ranked game, and like I was an idiot, and I was like, I'm the highest MMR. Nobody else was picking carry. Anyway, they aggro duo laned against me. I was playing AM, and classically one of the best supports against AM is Shadow Demon. And the whole idea is you disrupt, the AM, and then he hits himself because he has mana break, right? That's the like obvious thing, and that's what people always do. They aggro duoed me with Faceless Void Shadow Demon, and we had a jungler, of course, and we had and I had a line in lane. That was like he was terrible. But I was so proud of myself because I was like, this kind of ties into being situational. But I was like, I didn't autopilot and skill mana break, and I was like, I am just gonna not skill mana break because that means that instead of the Shadow Demon being like a very strong hero against me, arguably a counter, he just sucks. Like he was just worthless in lane because like his whole counter mechanic is predicated on me skilling my first ability. So I just didn't do it. And like it made my lane infinitely easier, and it was like I was very proud of myself. I was like, "That's smart. I'm so good." And I like saved the point, and then when a fight started, I skilled it, and like I did all the damage, and it was great. It was so good. But at the end of the game, I got flamed by our Storm Spirit that fed because he's like, "Yeah, idiot AM doesn't skill mana break in lane versus Faceless Void." Like you're gonna get like people are gonna say stupid things like
Well, I always just tell him go there. There's the better guy, and his name is @ProudDota. Send all questions to him about this build.
That's a good cop out. Like especially in those brackets, like my 5K or my like 4800 friend or whatever he is now told me about this.
Yeah,
we gotta be specific. Now that I'm getting uppity,
I understand.
Gotta be specific.
So now that I'm following Proud's build and I have those little stepping stone items, I have that Bassie to help me with the mana regen in lane, and then I pick up the Wraith Band to turn it into Aki, and I get some stats out of it. And I have those things to help me accelerate the farm. I'm going to be stuck on this build for the next 20 games. And after those 20 games, I'm going to be... And it's going to be because I'm learning the mechanics of the hero, and I'm learning how to weave in and out of a fight, and how to kind of artfully work my way around and turn into a rampaging machine on PA. And then there's going to come a time where I am comfortable with PA, comfortable enough that I should be able to vary up my items, but I'm not going to feel comfortable doing it because I've had so many repetitions building it this way. What should trigger me to what should I be looking for? Like, what do I do when I go into a game where, let's say I'm forced to first lock PA and they pick the lineup from hell against my PA? What the hell do I do? What do I pick up? What do I change? What should be the thing that triggers for me? Oh, I need to get this item.
Well, all right. So PA is more of a difficult example because there are certain builds that are much more susceptible to being forced to change right? Like PA, that build, it's so incremental, and all the parts are so cheap that you're very rarely going to be going wrong if you are just going like Phase, Aki, Blightstone, Vanguard, and then Desolator, right? That's very like cheap, and it has an easy path of growth. A hero like Naga, like a safe lane Naga, is going to be probably a better example of a hero where if you, depending on the game, if they pick a really good like aggressive lineup, and your natural build is like arcane boots and then straight radiance, which is bad, don't do that. But let's say that is your build that you're doing every game and winning with it, you are going to, on that example, that is much more exploitable, so you're going to have to be more situational with that one, because that's a build that has like a greater difference in the parts, and in the path from item A to item B is much larger.
So,
which I'm kind of stumbling on my words.
No, I understand.
That PA build is very secure, and that's the reason it's so good. Not to interrupt you, but that's the reason why you're going to have so much success with a build like that, is because it doesn't have clear holes. So the situations it doesn't work are so few, if any, compared to a much more situational.
Okay,
item.
so, and I get that, like, and I try to bring that up to personalize it as much as possible, but so maybe the discussion we need to be having instead is like who are the heroes who have the most versatility in the builds that are available to them.
Flub, I think you would agree with this, but every support, that's what I would say. Like every support game, you're like, all right, you're thinking of situations. You're thinking, all right, am I going to go phase boots? Am I going to go arcane boots, or am I going to go tranquils? Am I going to go soul ring, or am I going to go arcane boots? Am I going to go force staff, or do I need a glimmer cave? Do I need a blink dagger? Do I need yada yada yada? Anyway, Flub, you go.
I was going to say that, yeah, I kind of agree with you. I feel like that's not necessarily like a fair way to put it out, though, because like we have a lot of practice on that, and I feel like that there's other positions that generally have that same thought process of like you can go these other items. A lot of times with supports, yeah, it's you have a lot of potential to like do something a little bit differently, but I kind of feel like pigeonholed sometimes into certain situations. Like Glimmer Cape is just like really, really good to have on almost all supports, and it's generally really nice to be in that situation. So sometimes, like, you can say that it's very varied for a support player, but I feel like sometimes it kind of more relies on the offlane, the offlane, maybe the mid, or even the carry in the right situation. But I feel like some person has to be static when you're drafting. A hero generally has to have a certain style of play. So like if you have a PA, then like everyone else on your team needs to have that fluidity and be able to pick up different items within that hero. So like if you're gonna use Beastmaster, generally there's like a certain way to build the Beastmaster, and it's really, really strong. So he's kind of like a bad choice, but you can also kind of go differently with him. Like you can go an early blink to like set stuff up, or you can go the refresher orb. That's like generally what people do. It's a little not useful to use like Ags anymore, but that used to be something that you had to like worry about. Is like going into Ags. There's also different like types of heroes that like you can go down like Ags path, or you can go down just like better right click path, like Razor for instance. That's really nice to have. I feel like though the most varied position sometimes is actually mid. I know I'm going to get a lot of disagreement from this.
But, yes.
But if I've been in situations that you can create kind of like a flow for the team with an item that comes out. If you're going up against like a Ricky, in the past I've built items that were able to, like I built a Necronomicon, and it was on, I think it was on like Death Prophet. But in Death Prophet, it's not generally good to have because you need the defensive items to be able to stay alive or make your ultimate more useful. but you can use that ability to direct your team and have effective team fights. Whereas if you're depending on a support to get that item, you can't have them necessarily farm it up always. You you can depend on a support to get versatility and get what you need, but you can't necessarily depend on them getting it at the exact time that you want them to. Whereas a core, you can.
See, all right. I think my perspective on this is that there are mids that are mids that have very versatile and that have a lot of situational skill builds. I want to start using the word situational instead of versatile because we went over that so much last week. Even though they're relatively interchangeable, but there are mids that have situational item builds, but there are also many mids that have very linear item builds and skill builds. And whereas every support, with very few exceptions, has to be situationally minded, and they have to be thinking about little things. And I also think this is doubly important because they have so few items and they have so few opportunities to make these item choices and react to situations that their reactions matter a lot more, because if you're building the wrong item and you've already invested 1,000 gold, you're just screwed. Whereas on certain mids, you have a very linear path, right? If you're playing Invoker, you have like your first decision to make, right? You say, all right, am I going Quas Wex or am I going Quas Exort? If you're going Quas Exort, you have, unless you're doing like absolute garbage builds, you have like really one like pretty linear path, and there are choices to make off of that, but that hero is a lot less situational because he has so many resources. Same thing with Death Prophet, right? The reason why in that game you were allowed to go Necro 3, which I guess whatever maybe was good that game, I'll take your word for it. The reason you were able to do that is because you have so much money to do, and similarly, Death Prophet, even regardless of situation, her early item build is very linear. It's all right. I went Phase Boots, I went Bottle, then I went Yules, and then after that it's more malleable. So that's kind of my argument, is that if you're going to say positionally what has to be more aware of situation, I would say it's supports, but there are exceptions, of course, where there are a lot of mids that are situational, like item builds, like TA is a great example. TA, depending on the game, you're going to not only be making situational item choices, you're going to be making situational skill build choices and situational like structural choices for the flow of the game. And I mean, carry, I would say, is probably the least situational. Also, it's situational in different periods of the game, which kind of adds another layer of complication to this that makes it hard to make blanket statements like I love to make. But like, your carries and your mids, they make their situational item choices in the very late game, generally. Whereas supports do it in the early to mid game. And, I mean, even on a support, you could break it down even farther to say, all right, situationally, you're going to buy wards or you're going to buy your Windlace. Like, even the most basic level decisions on a support are situational, because you're thinking, I have so little money that, am I going to, at the start of the game, let's even break it down that far, am I going to buy both obs, sentries, smoke, and one set of tangos and courier? All right, well, if I bought that smoke, that means I can't buy a clarity. And if I buy a clarity, that means I can't buy a smoke, and then it extrapolates from there. Like, all right, are you going to buy the sentries? In which case, I can buy a Windlace, but then I can't buy a clarity, yada, yada, yada. Whereas on every core, with the exception of maybe offlaners, but even offlaners are fairly linear at start and at early game. It's like, all right, I'm going to buy a Wraith Band and Tangos because I'm playing Invoker mid. And then I'm going to go Aki, and then I'm going to buy my boots, and then I'm going to buy drums, and then I'm going to,
I see what you're saying, but I guess at the same time I feel like the situational aspect to varying up the item builds for a support are still relatively basic. In fact, I think it was you who, I know it was you. I've talked about this before. Playing support, you talk about, you get your boots, you get your Windlace, you pick up your support items, of course, along the way, and then you need mobility, right? Mobility is the next big thing on a support.
Absolutely.
So, So I either and I do exactly what you said. If it's a good
Well,
game,
there's
I go Blink. If it's a bad game, I go Force Staff.
absolutely.
But there still feels like there's a little bit of railroad for support in that regard, though. You know what I mean?
Yes. All right. So to clarify that statement, because this is actually a tangent I was going to go into, but with regards to that, you're very correct that on a support you have less possible choices. Like I would say, when you're talking about your like 2,000-ish gold items, there's like 5 main choices, right? You have Glimmer Cape, Blink Dagger, Force Staff, Mechanism, and like Veil even sometimes. And I'm sure there's another good one that I'm missing. And there are less choices to make, but the choices matter more because you have less opportunities for other things. That's what I would say. Whereas if you make a like inefficient choice on a support and you decide I'm going to build a Glimmer Cape when you really needed a Force Staff, you're just shafted. You have no recourse. It's just like, all right, well, now I'm just going to die to Ricky every single time because he's not an idiot, so he has dust, and I can't Force Staff myself out of Cloud. So, like, I just lost, right? Like, I think even though there are less choices as far as, like, the actual items you can buy, that does not mean that the choice is less important. Yeah. Debatably, that means the choice is more important because the items are so different, and with the exception of Force and Blink. Those are very similar, but just for different situations.
Sure.
But aren't we talking about variation at this point?
Like, that's kind of more... I'm with you, Flub. Yeah, keep going. That was the exact point I was going to make. Is I think it's more about variation than it is, just a decision between one item over the other.
Like, and I understand that there's a big idea of like support. Whatever you pick, you're stuck with. Like, and that's a really good point that those variation those decisions ultimately make a bigger end factor for that player or for the team in general. But I feel like that if you're talking about like true variation of like what of all the possibilities of what a hero can do or what its potential to do, it relies on having that farm to be able to move in and have all these different items that you could possibly buy. I think that people generally look at heroes and they say, no, they have to be built this particular way, and there's no way to really go around it because this is the most useful way to play in this scenario. And now we're also talking about playing Dota as like a pub, I assumed here. Like if you're talking about playing it as like a core situation of like you're playing with a team and this is how you're designing your outfit, it's like, yeah, you have to have certain items with cores so that you can go on to the rest of the game. But if you're not able to depend on certain things, certain items, whether it's wards or have like sight in general, I've picked up the Necronomicon in the past to just have that ability to force the team not only to come around me because I have sight, but it forces them to push, and it gives me an extra push element. And that hero is all about the push anyway. So as long as you can go down a similar idea path that it creates, as long as it works with the hero, nothing like Desolator, Death Prophet, that is, I will never argue that with you, Ursi, because we know of people, she will not be named, about like the Desolator.
That narrows it down a lot when you say she.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know quite a few girls who play Dota. I mean, it's not like everybody knows, but like
I think I've got to
like the reason why it's bad to have a Desolator though is because the only thing that it does is that it lessens the armor so that your spirits do more damage. She doesn't generally right click. It doesn't make you beefier. It doesn't make you it doesn't really help you push except for lowering the armor on the tower. It only helps one of the things out of like the three possibilities that you need with the hero. Whereas like if you look at the Necronomicon, it gives you health, it gives you mana, it gives you a little bit of a bonus on your attack damage because it's stat based. and it gives you the ability to see, gives you the ability to push harder, to have a tanking situation that is not only yourself, but another creep, that can like sit there and tank a shit ton of damage. And it also has the ability to do a mana drain. So like, it's not what I hear your point, but it's the variation that comes from the item that helps the role that you're trying to commit is, I think, what is important about Dota.
Okay, but I think because we've now stuck the word variation in, we are like kind of intermingling, because in my mind, and I think you guys will agree with this, and every variation is predicated on the situation, right? So variations are inherently situational. So your entire argument against me is just like you're making a similar argument. Also, the whole Desolator thing, I think we can all agree there are some things that are ostensibly bad on a hero, right? If you are playing CM, Blade Mail is bad. Just across the board, right? There are always going to be terrible items on certain heroes, and there are always going to be certain items that are very, very core on certain heroes. But I don't like saying that variation is different than situation. Like, every variation is based on the situation that you're in, right? Your variation on your PA build in the late game is based on the situation. It's not based on anything else, right? You're deciding between going BKB before Abyssal because the other team has a Lion and they have an Invoker, right? Like, that is the situation, hence variation, right?
Yeah, no, and I think that's, yes, I would agree. That's more the spirit of kind of like what I was getting at, which is, I mean, I guess for those of us that may not be able to, like, I believe, Flub, and I sense the doubt in your voice, Ursi, but I believe, Flub, that the Necronomicon in that particular game was the pickup for a number of reasons that Flub, as a higher skill player, was able to kind of pick up on and go, okay, this is what makes sense. He could have very easily picked up a gem. He could have very easily picked up, or he kept buying dust and left a slot open for it. Or loaded up on sentries.
Very good, by the way. I just want to clarify. I think it totally makes sense.
But I mean, that being said, like, so I get that Flub, you picked up on what was going on in that game. For those of us who are not as skilled, what are the things I need to be looking for, and what are maybe the more common items that I should be thinking about to maybe toss into a build that I might not otherwise think of? That classic, hey, there's a PA on the team, everybody buy an MKB situation. What are those items? What are the key things to look for? Or maybe even if this question is far too broad, what are some of the best examples you can think of?
Well, the best examples that I can think of, or just like general items that I would pick, are things that give you a bonus to your ability that you use. Like MKB is kind of an exception to that rule. But if you're like looking at a lot of items that are made, there's a lot of ones that like counter heroes or counter a concept that are based on the usable item. So like Silver Edge. Silver Edge is perfect versus PA, once again. It's also perfect versus a lot of other heroes that have that base, like,
that are affected by break.
Thank you. That are affected by break. There's also like other things that exist, like Pipe. Pipe's really good versus Zeus, for instance. If you have a Zeus on the other team, you should generally have a Pipe. Unless there's like they're all magic damage for some reason, then like everyone on the team should just pick up a BKB and say, we're done with it. We're gonna dive you every time and make sure that the fight happens on our terms. But like if you're taking it as a whole, I would say it's more of the items that actually have a bonus, because if you look at the ones that don't have a bonus, that are just like flat bonuses that exist that you don't have to activate, so crit's nice. It's generally not something that, like, I'm facing this guy, I'm gonna build crit.
Right.
It's kind of like the same thing with heart. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of things that add up to, like, I will pick heart because there's like a lot of explosive damage or something, but it's not something, once again, that I'll like pick up because they have a PA or they have a Zeus or they have a certain thing. So I would say that when you're thinking about it, you need to look at what the item does at the bonus. So Necronomicon, Veil sometimes for your team is great. Having a Blade Mail versus certain heroes just means certain death. Lotus Orb to get rid of silences is phenomenal. If you're a carry, obviously you can do the same thing with Manta. Lincoln Sphere versus very single heavy target guys. And I mean, I know I'm kind of like reiterating some of the ideas that already exist, but that's the thing is like, I feel like lower level players, they ask me these things and they're like, what's the secret? What's the thing? It's like, it's not really a secret. It's actually like well known. It's the ability to like think about that stuff at such a fast speed that gives me that edge. It's not and I know that seems like, that's not really good advice, but it's like, really think about whenever you're outside of the game, like think about, okay, what is this hero's potential? What is its designed to do? And if you can look and you can like understand Zeus does this, PA does that, you can like look over a team of 5 heroes and be like, okay, I generally know what's going to go on with this game. We'll move on from there. And I can generally, and most anyone at my skill level can generally look at a game and say the game is heading in this direction.
So, I think even to break this down further, I think Flub makes really good points. The most basic way to think about it is, instead of all right, let's see. I just said I was going to make it simple. Now I got to actually do that. If your problem is regarding situational item choices, the most basic thing you need to do first is realize which situation is good for each item and have that stuff internalized out of game or over the course of many games. That way, if you, like Flub was saying, like let's say Manta is very good against silences, and so in certain games on PA, let's say, you're going to prefer a Manta style over a BKB because the only thing that you're concerned with is, let's say, an Orchid from a Storm, and they have no other CC that's affected by BKB. So in that situation, you having that knowledge and having that understanding of each situational or each item and what situations they're strong in are going to pick up one item over the other. So if you, over the course of many games, retain this information and build up this pool of why is X item good and why is X item bad in certain situations, that's how you're going to learn to make these situational item choices in your games. Whether it's playing a hero that's more linear, like Sven has a pretty linear item path with some decisions, and that's a good like starter if you're thinking about situational item choices. Or if you're playing a very situational hero like see, what's a good item? What's a good example? Like maybe Kunkka is Kunkka's less because he is like kind of two path. Excuse me, I'm dying. It's terrible. I've been fine. Like I've barely coughed all day, and now suddenly I'm dying.
If only we had a show out there that like analyzed each of the items on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
And talked about when they were. Oh yeah, we do. It's try hard these days.
Yeah,
That's right.
It'll take like another like 2 years before we get to all the items, or before they get to all the items.
Hey, well, we're voting on the most important ones at least.
Yeah.
And nobody cares about Hooded Defiance. That's what I've learned about these two.
I'm voting for
weeks.
that every time. That item is so good.
It is last place every week.
I know, and I'm the only one voting for it, apparently. There's like 100 votes on the poll, and there's like one for Hooded Defiance. It's just me all alone.
I think what we're going to do, not to like talk about the other show, but I think actually next week I'm going to put forth the idea of dropping the lowest and dropping the highest, because we're going to do it, and then we'll switch up the items more and people can vote on different things, because I got some other stuff that people were talking about, like why aren't we talking about Silver Edge and other things like that. So I got to make people happy.
Thursday show.
Yeah, it's true. You can talk about it on Thursday show.
It's so good.
You just talk about Hooded Defiance, because something tells me it's not going to get selected for a really long time.
Hooded Defiance is a really, 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 really good item. Like, it is so underrated. It is criminal how underrated that item is. I like that item. changes the game fundamentally for like Timbersaw players. Like once I've seen like Fafnir, I was talking to him about this. It like changed the way I play Timbersaw after seeing a guy react and situationally he was like, "Hey, I'm playing Timbersaw. I'm gonna build a hood. It's only like 1,735 gold or something now after they buffed it.
It's only actually 25, but yeah, very close.
And that's just it's such a good item. Like honestly, try it. Like it's probably the most unpopular item in all of Dota, other than Veil, because nobody buys Veil.
I build it on Bristle whenever the team's got high magic damage, but that's maybe about it, and it's usually with the intent to turn it into a pipe.
Yeah, nobody goes Ghost Scepter either. Casual
Kind of
Ghost
go
Scepter.
down a random path here, but like it is actually, I agree with Urzi, especially on Pit Lord or Underlord, whatever.
Yeah.
It is so good on that hero. Like
Everything's good in that hero. He's OP.
Yeah, right. I mean, that hero is really good, but I mean, he's not OP. He's just good.
He's definitely OP. He is OP. It is. This is a tangent we don't need to make, but that is so overpowered, it hurts my head.
All right.
Like, I'm in physical pain that you're telling me he's not OP. God. There's reasons like it's like such a high pick rate and win rate in 5K plus. Like, the hero has a BKB piercing disable that reveals invis. He has a AoE nuke that it does, or not nuke, but an AoE incremental damage ability that not only does a ton of actual magic damage, but it does percentage-based dot over HP. And he also has a global TP that is uninterruptible and can take up to 4 friends and all the ads, I believe, with it. And he has a aura that makes the laning incredibly difficult and harassing him incredibly difficult. Like, all 4 of those abilities are OP individually.
See, I think if you nerf the Atrophy aura, though, it makes him a lot harder to lane, and it makes him a lot less useful, because his presence in lane is what gives him that super buff that makes him so hard to play versus. Like, Atrophy aura is, like, a really, really good ability, because he used to be, like, when he used to have Corpse Explosion was okay, but it was nothing compared to his other 2 abilities. So, like, people would just, like, ignore that ability completely. And it made sense at the time, and like then they gave him a trophy aura, and it's like, oh my god, this thing is crazy good. So
I don't know, Rain of Fire is pretty OP. Like, this is a tangent we don't need to get into, but that hero is OP. I will not stand to be on a podcast where somebody says Underlord is evenly balanced.
I'm just gonna talk about it next week for an hour. Just be like, oh, he's fine. Don't worry about it, Ice Frog. It's all good.
All right,
he's like,
I'm doing it. I'm gonna close this out, and the way I'm gonna do it the same way every week. All right, Flub, you got 60 seconds. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we go?
Overlord's the best. He's not cheap. He's the greatest thing ever. Sam's just jealous. Just don't listen to Ursi. He just poo-poos on everything. Don't worry about it, everybody. He's just a fair hero that exists, and it's all good. Just don't worry about it.
Ursi, 60 seconds, go.
To get back to the topic, because I'd like to be a professional.
Oh, yeah.
When you're talking about situational items, I think the most important thing is to analyze other people's play and your own play, and think, whether it's internally or through discussion with friends, think about the situations and why certain things are good and certain things are bad. And don't have linear things. Don't say, like, all right, every game on Jug, I'm going to go, Aki, Diffusal, Manta, whatever. Like, think about the pros and cons of each. And this is something I've said about, like, was one of the things that I learned even from viewing and playing with people that are lower MOR, is that they have, like, explaining item choices. It gives you a new respect for the item itself and why you're picking things up. And you can learn this very similarly if you just tune in, go to the Watch tab, click on the highest MMR game, look at the item builds, and see. And if you see, you'll see recurring themes. And those recurring themes are going to be core items. Like, you're going to see a lot of, Armlet on Lifestealer, or for for obvious reasons. We're also going to see interesting dynamic things, and those are representative of the situations that necessitate those items, right? So do that, and you'll learn situational item choices gradually, but you can really accelerate your growth if you start really thinking about the situations themselves. That's it, I think.
All right. And so I'm going to close out the show by listing off the things that I learned this game. or this episode. Let's see. So Blade Mail on CM, new meta. New build for Death Prophet is Deso Necro, and the Underlord is the most awesome hero to ever exist. That's what I got out of today's podcast, right?
That sounds about right.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, if that sums it up appropriately, I'm going to move on and say that if you guys want to find us, we're at defenseofthepatients.com. You can follow me at Twitter at .p_Cyphus, at Ursinity, and at FlubDota with 2 B's. We're at .p_show if you just want to follow the show in general. And if you want to go find, I think by the time this goes up, if you're listening to this early in the morning on Wednesday, you might still have time to go vote on the next Try Hard Tuesday item. I accidentally made the poll close in 24 hours, and I meant to give it 72. But I think we're going to get about the same results anyway. We got
maybe Hood has a chance.
It might have a chance. No, it's dead last right now. I'm not going to lie, Ursi. It's like
it's so good. Hood is so good. Oh my god, people.
If you agree with Ursi, you might have just a little bit of time to get Hood up there, or at least get it into second place so that it hangs around for next week.
Armlet on supports is good. That's what my 60 seconds should have been. Oh my god.
Yeah, Armlet on supports.
That's the most situational thing in the world. I got flamed so much for that on last week's TCT. Oh my god, it's so good.
Who did you build it on?
I built it on Rubik, mostly. Shadow Demon, occasionally. I almost built it on Coddle in a game on stream today. It was not going to be good, but I was going to do it just for fun. But it's good on Rubik. Like...
Okay, that's
Armlet Blade Mail on my next CM game.
It's
that's
good
what
on
I'm
CM
doing.
too. It's all situational. That's the best. Oh god, I can't believe we went through this whole podcast without me getting to talk about situational.
If only there were another podcast coming up this week where Ursinity was going to be the host.
I did that last week.
Oh, okay.
Last week. I spent 20 minutes, and Proud agreed with me after we reasoned it all out. Proud was like, "This makes some sense." In his I'm sure he threw in 6 curse words in the space of those 4 non-curse words, but
well, he's got to make up for the fact that you don't, So
yeah, he definitely picks up, and Anyway, sorry to break into that, but
that's all right.
I'm I actually shot myself in the foot for not bringing up Armlet and talking about how good that is on supports.
Well, it wouldn't be plugs if we didn't go off on a tangent in between them,
Yeah, that's why they're fun. That's why people listen to them.
Yeah,
probably, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. In some reality, I think we started the plugs last time. It was you that pointed out, and there was 25 minutes left on the episode. It was a good 25 minutes worth of plugs. So that's how me and Roland roll.
1 for 5 minutes.
Ursi, hey, do you want a 1v1 mid, dude?
I just I feel like I have some kind of stress disorder where I just hear Roland's voice in my head. No, that's not what I asked
about your stress. Do you want to 1v1 mid me, dude?
Easily, happily.
Okay,
let's
get you some Captain Morgans and let's do this again, dude.
Yeah, I'll go buy some alcohol and we can 1v1 mid.
All right.
Stay sober.
10 shots at least.
We're also at defenseofthepatients@gmail.com if you want to find us. At our website, click through the Amazon banner. I still haven't removed the survey. I need to go do that. At some point on the Wednesday show, we should discuss the demographics. Because I thought that was
maybe.
I don't know. Cool.
That's everybody's like, oh, it's so intrusive to ask these questions, and now we're gonna openly talk about our demographics. Gosh, just don't be surprised when you get a lot of My Little Pony commercials and bath salts commercials. That's all I'm saying.
No. I hope that's not.
We're gonna be doing a lot of makeup and hair care products.
That's right.
Bronies.
No bronies, says Roland.
No bronies.
No bronies.
No bronies.
We have a lot of under 12 female listeners that are big fans of My Little Pony, apparently. They specifically wrote that in. Every single email was Kaylee MLP at yahoo.com or Jennifer MLP at Google.
Yeah, that's right.
Not even Gmail. That child works for Google, apparently.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Google
so are we
proper.
hosting this 1v1 tomorrow with Roland and Ursi? Is that the cherry on top of the night? We should have Ursi versus him.
I don't think it can ever really happen because if Roland does 1v1 him and lose, there's too much for Roland to lose. Now it's on the flip. Now it's on the shoes on the other foot.
That is true. Also,
in a month or so to 1v1.
Yeah, in a month or so, he says.
He'll get training from Proud, who also can't beat me mid, or Flub, who also can't beat me mid. Who's gonna get training from?
Okay. This may be a Flub versus Ursi thing tomorrow. We'll see.
That's fine. That's fine. If you know how to play 5, you'd be playing 5 and I'd be playing 2, but that's not the case.
Oh, okay.
Hashtag fake beefs.
It's garbage, your builds.
Oh my God! All right, you can also find us. You can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, all your favorite podcast apps. Leave us a review. We love those. We love to read them. I think we've got one. We got to review. We still got to read. We got a couple emails. Oh, we have read it.
No, we've been saying, we need to read that one review for like a week and a half.
Yeah, I'm really bad about that. I always forget, and then I don't have it pulled up, and it's super difficult to find them. So I'm gonna be good one of these episodes.
Sucks.
Yeah, that was
You guys, this is the new .p thing. You just gotta like insult your friends.
Yeah.
Insult your friends and hashtag fake beefs. It's we're making a trend. Unless it's Roland, then don't use hashtag fake beefs. Just make fun of them.
No, Roland is hashtag real beef. Real beef. So let's see. And if you're enjoying all these tangential conversations that have nothing to do with Dota, come find us over on Let There Be Geeks. I'm hoping Ursi and Flub, you guys are gonna come over and do some Let There Be Geeks with us at some point, right?
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah, so I'm
hoping to try to get in on this weekend, but we'll see.
Okay, yeah, that'd be a blast. Because we all have a bunch of other nerdy and geeky interests, and I think like Proud was talking about trying to get like a Magic the Gathering episode going, and so there's a bunch of cool stuff happening over there. So if you're interested in some non-Dota stuff, check us out at lettherebegeeks.com or just search for it.
Can I
okay, Roland wants to say hi to.
Hey, Flub with
What's
two
up,
B's. How are you?
What's up? Pretty good, man.
Good. You guys had a great show. I listened to it.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, that was excellent. So this is Cypress Hill for Flub with two B's and some guy that made it on the show somehow, Ursi, saying good luck and Godspeed.